All right, so OpenAI, huh? Everyone's talking about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But today, we're going deeper.
Much deeper.
We're going behind the curtain to figure out what makes these AI models tick.
And trust me, it's way more interesting than just asking ChatGPT to, like, write you a poem or something.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And from what I've been reading, it seems like the secret sauce is data. Like a lot of data.
That's right. Mountains and mountains of data. But it's not just any data.
Okay, so what kind of data are we talking about here?
Well, OpenAI's models, they thrive on you.
On me.
Well, on your interactions. The questions you ask, the prompts you feed it, even the way you use its outputs.
Hold on. You're saying that every time I'm messing around with ChatGPT, I'm actually feeding this thing.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Imagine a chef.
Okay.
They're not learning from a cookbook. Instead, they're tasting thousands of dishes, experimenting with ingredients, figuring out what combinations work.
And that's what OpenAI is doing. But with language.
Yeah. OpenAI's transformer model, that's what it does. It gobbles up massive amounts of data, figures out how words connect to each other, how we structure sentences, even the emotions we're trying to get across.
So instead of flour and sugar and spices, this model is crunching on words and emojis and internet slang.
Exactly. And it uses all that information, all those patterns, to figure out the most relevant response.
That makes sense, I guess. But does the model actually get what we're saying? Or is it just really good at, like, linguistic connect the dots?
That is the million-dollar question. It gets to the heart of what AI actually is, right? Like, are these machines really thinking?
Right.
And right now, these models are really good mimics. They can make text that seems like a human wrote it, but they don't actually get the nuances, the emotions, the intent behind the words. Not like we do.
So it's like that friend who can quote every line from their favorite movie.
Yes.
But they don't always get the jokes.
Exactly. And that's why sometimes ChatGPT just sounds a little off.
Yeah. Even when it's grammatically perfect, something just feels not quite right.
Exactly. And this is also why OpenAI needs to keep feeding its model new data. Language is always changing. New trends pop up, new slang.
Right.
The AI has to keep up. It's constantly evolving.
So does that mean that, like, my late-night ramblings on ChatGPT are actually making this AI smarter?
You got it. Every interaction we have with these models, it all gets added to this huge pool of data. We're all, like, unwitting trainers in this giant AI experiment.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of freaky when you think about it.
It is, and it leads to a whole bunch of questions about data collection and privacy and how this technology is being used.
And whose data are we talking about exactly?
Well, that's what we're going to dig into next.
So whose data are we talking about exactly?
Right. So we've established that OpenAI, they need this constant flow of information to keep their algorithms, humming along.
Yeah. Keeps the lights on. But where's it all coming from? Are we talking, like, scraping the entire internet, secret databases? What?
Yeah. Well, it's actually a lot simpler than that. Remember how we were saying your chats with ChatGPT, they're all part of the learning process?
Wait, you mean like my late-night ChatGPT brainstorming sessions?
Yeah.
Those are feeding this thing.
Exactly. By default, when you're using these tools, your interactions, they can be used for training to make the models better, refine them.
Wow. I did not realize that. It's like we're all shaping this technology without even knowing it. Kind of wild.
It is. It's like this giant feedback loop, right? Every question, every prompt, even every typo, it all gets added in.
So it's not just our conversations, right? I mean, we're talking everything. Articles, code, maybe even like social media posts.
Potentially. It's not just about how much data either. It's about how diverse it is, how complex. That's what lets these models get so good at, sounding human.
That's kind of amazing, but also a little creepy, right? Like, do people even know this is happening?
It's a great question, and it brings up this whole other side of AI, the ethical layer.
Because if we are talking about using people's data to train AI...
someone has to be watching out for the ethical side of things.
Exactly. So how does that work? Who's making those decisions?
That's where things get really interesting, and it might not be who you think.
So someone has to be watching out for the ethical side of things.
Right, and it's not always, some tech genius with all the answers.
Really? So who is it?
Well, it turns out a lot of the responsibility falls on, regular people.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. Tell me more.
So OpenAI, they employ all these people, thousands of them, whose job it is to basically teach the AI what's right and wrong.
So like digital babysitters for these super smart AIs. Interesting.
Kind of. They're called annotators, and their job is to look at the AI's output, the text it generates, and make sure it's not, offensive, biased, or just plain weird.
So they're like the gatekeepers of good taste in the AI world. Sounds like a big responsibility.
It is. They're the ones filtering out the nasty stuff, making sure the AI stays on the right side of, well, human decency.
Which makes you wonder, what's it like to have that job? To be the one deciding what an AI can and can't say.
It's a tough job, and often it's not very glamorous.
Right, I bet.
These annotators are dealing with some pretty intense stuff, filtering out hate speech, violence, all sorts of things you wouldn't want your AI spitting back at you. And often they're doing it for pretty low pay, long hours, not ideal conditions.
Wow, that's really something to think about. We're talking about this cutting-edge technology. But behind the scenes, it's humans doing the heavy lifting, often not getting the recognition or the compensation they deserve.
Exactly. It's a side of AI that doesn't get talked about enough, but it raises important questions about the true cost of ethical AI, who's bearing that burden, and is it sustainable?
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, there's something I've been wondering about this whole time.
Yeah. What is it?
So we've talked about how OpenAI's models, they're great at mimicking, but they don't truly understand the data, right? So what happens when you throw something new at them, something they've never seen before?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it really gets to the limits of what these models can do.
So they can't just, figure it out based on everything else they've learned.
Not really. Remember, these are pattern recognition machines at their core. They excel at finding connections in existing data, but when you throw something completely new at them, something that doesn't fit those patterns, they tend to, well, fall apart.
So it's like they can write a killer sonnet in the style of Shakespeare, but ask them to pen a rap song, and suddenly they're lost.
Exactly. And that's because they don't have the same capacity for true understanding, for creativity that humans do. They're limited by the data they've been trained on.
Which makes you wonder what's next for AI. If these models are ever going to break free from these limitations, something's got to change, right?
Absolutely. And there are people working on that right now, trying to figure out how to get AI to think more like we do, to learn from fewer examples, and adapt to new situations more easily.
So maybe the future of AI isn't about building bigger, more complex models, but about teaching them to think more critically and creatively, more like humans.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond just mimicking patterns and toward true understanding and innovation.
It's a fascinating and frankly a little bit daunting thought, isn't it?
It is. This whole world of AI, it's moving so fast and the implications are huge, but it's also incredibly exciting. Who knows what the future holds?
That's the beauty of it, right? The possibilities are endless. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about data, about ethics, about the very nature of intelligence itself. Hopefully you're walking away with a better understanding of how these AI models really work and the profound impact they're having on our world.
And maybe even some new questions to ponder. Because the more we learn about AI, the more we realize how much there still is to discover.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of OpenAI. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep those minds curious.